Member for Burnaby-Lougheed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. As always, it's my privilege to rise this morning on behalf of Burnaby-Lougheed in support of the motion on the floor, recognizing the value of adult basic education and English language learning programs for the refugees. Now, like the member who spoke before me, I too served in the education sector, both as an instructor at BCC and also as an administrator as the head of department at BCIT. And I rebuke the notion that this government stripping of the tuition-free ABE and ELL have no impact. That's absolutely not true. He knows as well as I do that the waiver gets clawed back at minimum wage, and a good bulk of those needing ABE training are those who already have high school credentials but need to make that career transition that most of us face when we hit that middle age or if the life circumstances turn on us. So on that note, I will go back to my notes here that the Immigrant Services Society of BC on their website opens the topic of refugee settlement and integration as follows. So I will quote, "Imagine arriving at the airport with nothing but a shirt on your back after fleeing your homeland due to persecution, violence, or war. You may be alone or with your surviving family, unable to communicate in English and feeling lost. Now, such would be the reality for over 15 million refugees worldwide in 2008, according to UN. Canada has a long-standing tradition of providing protection and residency to refugees from around the globe, and in the 4-year period between 2004 and 2008, over 150,000 convention refugees and protected persons were embraced by our country that made up for over 12% of our total immigration. Ontario received the biggest share of refugees at 57.2%, Quebec second at 21.3%, Alberta third at 7.2%, and British Columbia fourth at 6.5%, which is a significantly smaller portion compared to the other jurisdictions, and also considering that we attract 2.5 times as many immigrants from other classifications at 16.7% of total immigration to Canada. So it's worthwhile noting certain demographics of the refugees who were on average younger than other classes of immigrants, with nearly half of them under the age of 25 on arrival. It is also the case that almost half of them spoke neither English nor French, with close to 2/3 of them having less than primary or secondary education, if any at all. 95% of refugees to BC settled initially in the Greater Vancouver region, in Surrey in particular. So not surprisingly, Honorable Speaker, considering the census, the settlement outcome for refugees would be contingent largely on the education and skills, which tend to be minimal, as well as the physical and mental condition, which often at their worst, not only at the time of their arrival, but really how we cultivate and develop them after they have arrived in our country. So it turns out that the 2/3 of the refugees will likely need trauma counseling. Children make up 1/3 of refugee population and will need schooling. But regardless of background or age, gender profile, they all need empowerment to gain practical command of English in Canadian context and basic educational prerequisites recognized in Canada for further vocational training and job prospects. So it is the English language training and adult basic education, Honorable Speaker, that constitute the kind of settlement process for successful integration beyond just landing on our soil to form the foundation to finding permanent housing, securing sustainable income, managing finances, and putting roots down in their new community. If the new federal Liberal government make good on their promise on the increased refugee intake, our province will need to be ready with a coordinated response for that potential mass arrival. Our community service providers and private sponsors like ISSBC, health authorities, and Van City, etc., have been hard at work to look for housing, food, transportation, healthcare, education, and training solutions for the refugees, as the existing government support is limited and lacking. For example, BC's Welcome House, where government-assisted refugees spend their first few weeks, can only sleep 75 people. On top, just this year alone, this government began charging hefty tuition for ABE and ELL programs. So, Honorable Speaker, opening our doors to those seeking asylum is just the first step to a long-term commitment for us as a society, but also what we should consider a very worthy investment. Studies do show that refugees and immigrants contribute positively to the Canadian economy, with many starting small businesses that employ both themselves as well as Native Canadians. In addition, they also help us offset the effects of our aging population and declining birth rate. So no different than many immigrants of other classification, our refugee group is grateful and eager. I join my colleagues on this side of the House calling on the government to recognize the
Thank you,
value of
member.
accessible and affordable ABE and ELL
Thank you, member.
programs. Thanks.